to working with security in the Arctic region in a more structured way. We have, by the way, asked for this for several years, but as you know, there's been this idea about low tension. It sounds very nice on a paper, but it doesn't reflect reality and the world that we are living in, unfortunately. So what we have suggested NATO is to be permanent present in the Arctic region, also in and around Greenland. Now we have Arctic Sentry as a framework. We have to put substance into it. The good thing about Arctic Sentry is that it's a flexible way of working, so it can be changed, it can be moved, it can be on a high level, it can be on a lower level, so it can, I mean, reply to the challenges that we see. If we come, I mean, when I look at NATO, I see we have, of course, an eastern flank. We have everybody knows about that. By the way, nowadays, today, that's the most important one. It's where most of our capabilities should be used for. We have a southern flank, counterterrorism, and probably one day we will see that somebody tries, Russia, of course, to use migrants from the southern part of NATO, as we have seen in Belarus and in Finland. We have a new flank when it comes to AI. Space, quantum physics, but we also have a northern flank. It's not where we have the most challenges today, and the Arctic region is enormous, and we have more issues in other parts of the Arctic region than we have around Greenland. Also important to say, but the world is changing, and so is the weather because of climate change. So at some point, we really have to be aware about what Russia and China will do around Greenland, but we are not there yet. But it's good to be, I mean, before things happen. So for us, Arctic Sentry is a very, very good thing. Let me just finalize this by saying we have to have the Arctic region reflected in our capability targets. Allow me to be a bit technical, but the capability targets we are seeing in NATO today does not reflect the high north and the Arctic region. And if we can change this, my suggestion would be to have industrial targets afterwards, because many of the capabilities we need in the Arctic region haven't been produced yet. Some of them has to be produced in US, and the production lines are not really replying to the needs we have. The same goes for Europe. So I hope this answers some of your questions. If you are interested in the more political part of this, I'll come back to that.
We will definitely get to the political side of it. We also want to just take a moment. The Prime Minister mentioned Greenland as being obviously a big part of Arctic security. Mr. Prime Minister, can you walk us through, give us a little sense of the view from Greenland?
Yeah, of course. First of all, I will be a bit more political, I think, in my start, because Greenland has been a center of attention for quite a long time now. And this topic has been filling the media. And from a Greenlandic perspective, we have been living in our region in peace and in low tension for many years. But we have also recognized in Greenland that I don't think there is any low tension areas in the world anymore, and we need to be a part of building up capabilities and taking our share in surveillance and in security in our region. And that's why I'm perfectly aligned, and we work really close together in terms of security in our area. And we are also very happy to have the NATO Arctic Sentry in Greenland. I think it's a step in a really good direction. But I will also mention, as Mette mentioned, that talks about Russian and Chinese ships around our region in Greenland. It's not now, but we are not naive, and we see the longer perspective when our routes in the northwest and the northeast they melt. There might be more traffic, but what we are aligned on, and the most important thing is that we will do more, and we are willing to lift our responsibility in Greenland to make that happen with our allies in the NATO alliance. And it's very important for me to say that the Arctic Century and the NATO alliance, it's something that we are truly committed on as Greenlanders. Transatlantic cooperation and international rule of law and so on, that's deeply in our values. But thank you for being able to attend this panel.
Thank you very much. So thank you both for setting the scene here. I want to start with our host here, Minister Pistorius. Both the Prime Ministers mentioned Arctic Century. You just came from a NATO meeting where this is now the new NATO mission that's just started this week in Greenland. Despite the fact we've been hearing quite a bit about it, it's not really clear what it is. Is it a rotation? Is it a long-term presence? How many troops are involved? You dispatched some, I think about a dozen German troops to Greenland several weeks ago to do an assessment. What did they tell you, and what is Arctic Century?
Mette answered that question already when she said Arctic Century is a framework. It's something we can put in and take out what is needed and what is not needed any longer. So what we start with is some Eurofighters from Germany, air fueling, and P-8 Poseidon in the weeks to come. So we put in everything we can do, like other NATO allies too. And we watch the situation, we are seeing what's going on, and we can react in the way which is appropriate. This is Arctic Century, and the framework is so decisive from my perspective, since everybody, I think, in this room too, believes we never were busy with the Arctic before. That's not true. I mean, we have been knowing all the time that the Arctic is relevant. I've been in Norway, in the northern, very high north of Norway 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, and having another view on the globe from the very north is totally different than looking at it from Berlin or from wherever, from Washington, for example. So it is another perspective, and it shows very impressively how the distances changes and the hemispheres of influence of the powers of the world, like Russia, like China, like the United States, and of course the European countries in the high north. So it is about to prepare for, to prove that we have understood years ago already of the relevance of the Arctic. And to be honest, the discussion of Greenland, of course, had an impact on that. Mm-hmm. But to be clear, it's the same point is, it never was about, from the Washington perspective, about security when it came to Greenland. It was about other issues to remain diplomatic. So therefore, it's very important to do that, because it shows, okay, you are concerned when it comes to the security of Greenland. We are concerned about the security of the Arctic, including Greenland, and therefore we take part in everything what happens there, of course, always in the framework of NATO and not just alone.
You've both mentioned Russia and China as possible threats in the Arctic. I think that's what we usually hear about when they talk about the potential threat. So I want to unpack each of those. Foreign Minister Anand, can you take Russia? What is the threat that Russia poses now in the Arctic, and how is that evolving, if it's not maybe a direct threat right now?
So after the illegal and unjustifiable further invasion of Ukraine in 2022, we have seen Russian infrastructure move further and further north towards the Arctic Circle. The geopolitical environment is shifting rapidly, and that is one way in which it is doing so. From Canada's perspective, we have the second largest country in the world. 40% of our land mass interfaces with the Arctic. 70% of Canada's coastline interfaces with the Arctic. So this is a very real and important shift in the geopolitical environment that we must acknowledge, in addition to climate change, which is melting the polar ice caps and making transition through the Northwest Passage, for example, much different than it has been in previous decades. The fact of the matter is that Canada, while we are appreciative and support Arctic century, we are also taking the bull by the horns and ensuring that we are now ramping up our investments and infrastructure in the Arctic. And this isn't a decision we took today or even yesterday. In the past years, we have been launching procurements for over-the-horizon radar, for Arctic icebreakers, in addition to the ones we already have, for NORAD modernization. And here, I will say that we are very closely partnered with the United States in terms of continental defense. So when we think about the Arctic, we have to ensure that it's not just NATO that we are focused on. NORAD, and in particular the role that Canada and the United States play in aerial surveillance over the Canadian Arctic, is extremely relevant and important. These two systems of collaboration are complementary. And the fact of the matter is that we need to all acknowledge the changing global threat environment and the importance of supporting each other, collaborating with each other in terms of our capabilities in the Arctic and our diplomacy in the Arctic. And the final point I'll make is we have an Arctic foreign policy, and we've had one for years. We opened a consulate in Nuuk, Greenland, thank you for hosting us, because we believe in expanding our presence in the Arctic, and we want to do that in collaboration, especially for purposes of Indigenous peoples and Inuit, the original owners of the land. We will also open a consulate in Anchorage this year for the very same reason. Our approach is collaborative. Our approach is one in which we build together through multilateral organizations and partnerships.
It's okay, you can clap. We love claps. We love applause. Senator Murkowski, the foreign minister laid out Russia's really growing opportunities, I guess, to get closer to the United States, to North America, to Canada, as times are evolving. What about the threat from China? How has that, is it a threat right now? Are you seeing that manifest in any way? And again, how is that one changing?
The short answer is yes. The short answer is yes in terms of what we're seeing with China. And it's not just with China. We've seen China up in the Arctic on doing research or mapping, whatever it is they may say they're doing. But the new factor here is what is happening together in cooperation with Russia, whether it is the joint bomber operations that we are seeing flying over the north that we are sending up our fighters to intercept, whether it is the Coast Guard and naval vessels that are operating jointly. Used to be the Russians would lead, now we're seeing actually the Chinese lead some of this. So what we're seeing is what is unusual. Now, you have mentioned the proximity to Russia, and I think particularly when we're sitting here in Munich, it's easy to just think about the eastern side and the threat from Russia from here. But for us in Alaska, it is very real. It is every day. It is 2 miles. 2 miles between Little Diomede, which is U.S., and Big Diomede, which is Russian. 57 miles from basically the shoreline of Alaska to the shoreline of Russia. So it is real. We see it. We feel it. And I think the geography hasn't changed. I'm fascinated, too, that we have such a full audience today. And I'm encouraged by it, but I'm just going to tell you, the map hasn't changed. Alaska was always sitting there. Canada occupies as much of the Arctic as it does. Greenland is massive. The geography hasn't changed, but the threats have changed. And the threats have changed because we have seen the warming temperatures due to climate change that are opening up these avenues of commerce. We are seeing the threats to infrastructure that we had previously built up in the Arctic that are now challenged. We are seeing changes to this threat because of this combined operation or cooperation between Russia and China. And this is why we need the alliances that we have. This is why we need the NORAD cooperation, why we need a strong NATO alliance, why NORAD and NATO must be working in tandem with one another. Because the alliance that we're seeing with China and Russia right now, think about where else on the globe they're partnering, they're working together. It's in the Arctic. Mm-hmm. So that should send as much a message as we need about why the Arctic matters right now from a security perspective. So there is much that must be done, and I'll end my comment. Several of you have noted high north, low tension. It came to my attention yesterday that somebody said it should be high north, low attention. Oh. Because in fairness, we have not been paying attention to the Arctic as we need to from a security perspective. We've made investments in the past, and we've walked away. And now we want the opportunity to dust them off, to build them back up, at what cost? That's why we're here.
So I was very struck by the Munich Security Conference. When you go on their website, there's this highly produced video, and it's an elephant that's walking, and it says, we're going to address the elephant in the room. So I'm going to address the elephant in the room because, yes, there are these threats, but one of the major reasons I suspect that a lot of people are here tonight, in addition, obviously, to seeing everyone who's up on stage, is the fact that President Trump has been talking about the U.S. owning Greenland. So I just want to get that out. He spoke about it again yesterday. Madam Prime Minister, he said last night that that the United States is in negotiations to take Greenland. You've said in the past that he should be taken seriously when he's talking about these things. Do you believe that President Trump still wants to own Greenland?
Unfortunately, I think the desire is the same. It's something we, of course, talk a lot about. And I would also add that I think the pressure on Greenland is totally unacceptable. We are talking about threats, but as you often say, Jens-Frederik, the people of Greenland have never been threatened before by anyone. So I think the pressure is unacceptable. I think we have been very clear from Greenland and Denmark, and by the way, from all of our allies, Canada in Europe and good friends in the US, that there are, of course, things that you cannot compromise on. Our basic values, the cornerstone, I mean, of our democracy is, of course, the respect of other states' sovereignty and territorial integrity, and, by the way, a people's right for self-determination. There's a very proud people living in Greenland. So there are things that we cannot compromise on, and that, by the way, we will not compromise on. But there are other things we can do together, and we have already been talking a lot about it. We have as many of you probably know, a defense agreement. The Kingdom of Denmark and US, we have had it since 1951. It gives a very, it's very easy for US to have a stronger footprint in Greenland. At some stage they had 17 bases and 10,000 soldiers. Now there's one base and 200, 230, 40 something people there. And I mean, we have always been a very reliable, strong partner for US. So if it's a question about home defense, if it's a question about common security, we will always like to work together with the US. So that is possible, but no. Everybody asks us, do we think it's over? No, we don't think it's over. We now have a working group. It's good. We will try to see if we can find a solution, and you can rely on us, you can trust us. We will do whatever we can. But of course, there are red lines that will not be crossed, and we will stick to our strategy.
Mr. Prime Minister?
Yeah, thanks. And I just want to add that I don't think it's an elephant in the room anymore. He's pretty transparent and has been for 14 months. And the pressure on the Greenlandic people, if I think about my people, we are so proud. We live in a harsh environment. We are resilient. We live in a land where nobody were able to live for many, many, many years. There's a reason why we are the ones left. And still, and there's a reason why it's us that has built that society up for many years. It's not an elephant in the room. But I also want to say, and I think this is very, very important, the pressure on us is unacceptable. We all know the story, but I don't think it's only about us. This is not only about Greenland. Imagine a NATO country acquiring, taking, threatening an ally. Where would the world stand if that happened? We would be a puzzle. We would be a puzzle in a big game. And what would prevent America, if they did that, USA and Russia and China, to split up the world in 3 big blocks if this was allowed? It's outrageous. And I don't think we can lower shoulders either. I think we have taken some steps in the right direction. Dialogue, respectful and dialogue in a working group, so we don't communicate through the media, where we wake up to threats every morning and so what? Outrageous. But now we are speaking together more directly through the right channels. And now we have and I also want to state from the get-go, Mette said it a bit, in terms of the threats in our region and the threats from Russia and China, the paradox is the Greenlandic people has never felt threatened, and first time they felt unsafe for real when was an ally talked about acquiring them, buying them and so on. It's outrageous. But we are taking steps in the right direction, I think. I think the NATO Arctic insurance is Sentry is good, and I think the exercises in Arctic endurance were a step in the right direction too. And we all agree on we need to do more in our region in terms of security, and we have never disagreed on it. We also have a defense agreement from 1951 that's very good for both parties, right? If the argument is that there's not enough security, so yeah, that's where we stand. I needed to take that out. Thank you.
Just quickly, are you? Great. Like I said, we love the applause. Keep them coming. Just really quickly, do you feel confident that the negotiations actually can lead to an agreement, or is President Trump so set on owning Greenland or parts of Greenland? Do you have any indication?
As I said, I think we need to take the right steps. And I think the first right step is to have a dialogue between us. But as I also said, we cannot lower our shoulders. Look, the desire to control or to have Greenland is there, but I think we are taking the right steps, both in terms of our dialogue, but also in terms of the big issue for them, the security, national security, international security. It has many names now because it's been mentioned so much, but I think we are aligned on that one. And I think we have to take those discussions. And there's been very good steps in the right direction in the NATO frame that we are happy for, because we are committed to be a part of the alliance that has kept the world somewhat safe in terms of NATO countries since the Second World War.
I failed to mention that we will take some questions from the audience. Get your questions ready. I just want to do a few more while I have a moment. Minister Pistorius, you just came from NATO. Is there any recognition that NATO, I guess, dropped the ball with security in the Arctic? Or do you think that NATO has been enough of a presence there and this, the threat is sort of outpacing?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we need to extend that, of course, because the threat increases in the last 2-3 years in a relevant measure. So it is about doing more as NATO. And if it is about security from the perspective of Washington, then it is NATO to address that problem and to solve it by joint activities, joint missions, joint operations, and a permanent presence in the High North, and in Greenland if wanted by Denmark and Greenland. So it is about NATO, not about anybody else. And to repeat what I said this afternoon, to make that clear again, the biggest ally of an alliance threatens and questions the territorial sovereignty and integrity of another ally. This is incredible. And this damages an alliance like NATO, which has been the most successful alliance in the history of mankind. So we have to remain absolutely clear in what we are doing and saying, and therefore I was so grateful, Mette mentioned it earlier, when the European allies reacted in between days, not as everybody is supposed from them in the past, like in 2 or 3 months or weeks, whatever. In 2 or 3 days, they reacted, we reacted, and sent a clear signal in any directions. Arctic has to be secure, with regard to Russia and China, but it is a sovereign country, Denmark and Greenland, and that has to be respected in any context too.
Minister Anand, you mentioned the huge proportion of Canada that is Arctic. Do you feel like there is more that Canada specifically can be doing? And if so, what? You mentioned the ambassador, the Arctic ambassador, the new consulates, but is there more that Canada specifically can be doing for security?
So we aren't relying on any one other country to help us through Arctic security. We are acknowledging that the threat environment has changed and that we will ourselves ramp up our spending on defense and dual-use infrastructure. We are putting $80 billion into defense spending. In this economic environment, that is remarkable. We will reach 5% by 2035, but more importantly, we really need to understand that the threat environment has changed, as I said, and to elaborate on that, it is a geostrategic issue in terms of Russian infrastructure moving further north towards the Arctic Circle. But let us make no mistake that there is an economic advantage to ensuring that you have play in the Arctic. In other words, this is not just about land acquisition. This is also about mineral exploration, energy, and economic advantage that can be gained by having propriety in the Arctic. And so, whereas historically, the threat environment could be siphoned off from military, strategic / military, and then economic, and then environmental. Now, all of these individual threats are converging, and they are converging in the Arctic. And we must be eyes wide open about the fact that there is economic advantages to be gained, and Canada believes in stabilizing the supply chains for critical minerals. We also believe that we have to respect territorial integrity and sovereignty in the discussion of ownership of these resources.
Minister, you want to say something?
I just would like to add something in terms of when did we realize that the Arctic needs more of our attention? I mean, we initiated together with Canada and Norway in 2024 the Maritime Security Agreement. Denmark joined 1 year later. This is a proof of that we have seen already earlier, we prepared that already in 23, that it needs to be watched more carefully what is going on and what can we do. And Iceland will join us in the near future, and we are open for other partners in that region, in that area, because the North Atlantic, the high north, the access to the North Atlantic and the Atlantic in between North America and Europe is essential for our security and for our prosperity. Therefore, it is so crucial to keep control about that and not let that fall to Russia and China.
Mm-hmm. Senator Murkowski, I want to ask one more question before we go to the audience. You traveled to Greenland this past week. What did you hear? What did you learn?
I learned, first and foremost, directly from the Greenlanders, that they are a very proud people, a very strong and resilient people, as the Prime Minister has noted. I knew that because I've been to Greenland multiple times, but it was reinforced to me in so many different ways. And it underscored, again, why we respect the self-determination of the people of Greenland, why we respect the sovereignty of the Kingdom of Denmark as you choose the decisions that are best for the people, and we respect that will and that choice. The conversation that has been had in this past year about somehow or other acquiring, buying, taking over military force, whatever the terminology may be, has distracted in ways that I don't think any of us could have anticipated, because we're talking about the security of a region. And we've been talking about it as Arctic nations for years, been taking steps. Maybe we needed to move quicker. I think we needed to move quicker. In fairness, I think the United States has actually been lagging in much of our own commitment to our U.S. Arctic. So we all have a shared responsibility in this. But when we're spending this much time talking about the situation with Greenland and whether or not the United States is going to acquire it, it takes the eye off the real issue, the real threat, which is Russia, and what Russia is doing with China. And it takes away our ability to build on these alliances that have been so strong, that are so important going forward. And it unfortunately focuses the issue of security solely on defense, when there is so much more that needs to be wrapped into the security discussion when we're talking about the Arctic. Remember, it is cold and dark much of the time. It is very isolated. In our Arctic, very small populations, we have shared challenges in terms of affordability of people to live there, how we are able to keep our young people in our Arctic communities. What are our economies? We can share so much with Greenland in terms of what it means to have a small community be overtaken by a cruise ship that comes to your town. You want the economy, but you want to have your own identity. We have so much to be working on. And we have been so distracted is a mild term right now. In my view, it has been offensive that this view that the United States can come in and say, we want this to a sovereign territory. That's not how major powers should act. This is not the way the United States should lead when it comes to the Arctic. This is not how we should lead when we are trying to build our alliances in an area that is so very, very, very necessary now.
Thank you so much for your clarity.
I do want to take some questions. I have one very quick one for Prime Minister Nielsen. I'm just curious, how much of your time since President Trump has really started talking about, how much of this is of your time is this taking up? I mean, is this your primary focus right now?
It is, of course, it is.
It is. Even still, even with the negotiations, has this become?
Yeah, as I said, this is very, very serious, and the situation is still serious. As I said, we have steps in the right direction, and that's okay. But does that mean that desire is gone and we can lower shoulders and so what? That we can do less now? No. So we are using all of our resources to protect our I was about to call it friendship, but the alliance and the partnership and the respect for democracy, international law, and so on. We use a lot of resources on that.
Mm-hmm. I do want to take some questions. I saw your hand first over there.
Thank you very much. I have a question to Senator Murkowski. I wanted to ask. Oh, very like this. Thank you. I'm a freelance journalist from Switzerland, and my question would be, how should we handle China's aspirations in the Arctic without creating new or more tensions? We have already tensions. From the other side, what could be like another working group, or what could we do? Thank you.
I think the answer is here. I think the answer is in greater alignment with shared Arctic interests to demonstrate that there is no separation. There is no separation. Think about the map right now. The map, the way those of us in the Arctic look at it from above. When Finland and Sweden joined NATO, you go all the way around from Finland, who shares that border with Russia. You go all the way around the top of the globe, all the way over here to Alaska. We're so far west, we're east, which is actually true. But we are flanking Russia, and we can isolate them as they have done because of their invasion of Ukraine. But it will be the strength of our shared commitment that I think makes the difference when it comes to China. But it's also going to take investment. It's going to take a focus on domain awareness, what we are able to do more cooperatively when it comes to enhanced communication. We're going to have to use the technologies that will allow us a more nimble platform in the Arctic when it comes to China.
Madam?
In Prime Minister Carney's Davos speech, he specifically called for cooperation and coordination globally on issues of mutual concern, and said that if you're not at the table to discuss these issues, then you're on the menu. And in particular, I would like, as foreign minister now, implementing the foreign policy that was outlined in Prime Minister Carney's speech, to say that this is a key example of the way in which middle powers can coordinate and cooperate so that our interests are not just voiced, but they are pragmatically actioned in terms of capability complementarity, in terms of support for issues that arise and threats that arise, as the EU came together and responded on the threat to Denmark and Greenland. These are examples of the way in which we can work together, and we cannot lose sight in this geopolitical environment of the importance, value, and necessity of working together, cooperating and coordinating at every turn through existing multilateral alliances and alliances that arise as necessity causes alliances to be formed.
Sir. Sorry, I'm making you run through the crowd here.
I just want to talk about, a lot of this seems to be different sets of facts. Some people are saying there's loads of Chinese and Russian activity around Greenland, and other people are saying no, or at least not now. Can some of the differences of opinion politically be resolved by having a common picture of what the facts are?
It would be too easy.
So great.
I mean, that does seem like a fact, right? Whether there's ships or presence or not.
This is a good point.
And the facts are, madam, they're...
We have the facts. Of course we have.
Sir?
Thank you for this opportunity. I don't want to damage the environment here because I'm from China, indeed. I would like to say, I understand now, this time, some American and European, you try to repair the transatlantic relations. But I think it could be out of logic and reason that to take China as a so-called threat and to help you get some more cooperation in Arctic. I think, yes, especially the Madam Senator, you, in your accusation against China, I think mostly because of you think that China and Russia, they are a kind of, close relations. And also some other, I think, based on the imagination. Even Prime Minister, you think, okay, you have fact. But I think it depends on how about the judgment from our Greenland people. I think that not only just cooperate with Russia. For a long time, China has been looking for any opportunity to cooperate with Nordic countries, including Denmark. So my question is, now if we try to touch the real point of the issue is, once there are some more militarization of Greenland, and then expand to Arctic region, I mean more and more militarization, what will happen? Also, American lady mentioned, okay, there will be some confrontation between NATO and Russia in Arctic region. What will happen, and especially what will happen for the whole world? Because as we know, more and more fragmentation of geopolitical tension or some other. Thank you.
Does anyone want to take that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think from a Greenlandic perspective, we are very, very clear on what we want. We want to be a part of the Transatlantic Alliance. We want to be a part of NATO, and we want to cooperate very closely with countries that shares our values. Values of international law, democracy, and so on. It's a very clear answer from a Greenlandic perspective. And we are ready to cooperate with anyone that we think shares our values. And in terms of the security aspect, in some of your question, it was like you mentioned that maybe China was a tool in the debate to ramp up in the Arctic region. And somebody also said today that it's not only security, there's much more in that. In Greenland, we agree on we need to do more on Arctic security. In Greenland, we also agree on that we have a responsibility with our geographical placement. Like you said, the map still looks the same, right, Lisa? We need to do more on security, surveillance. It's and we are perfectly aligned on that with our friends, and we also see examples now with the Arctic Century and so on. That's something we in Greenland agree on perfectly. But to state it clear, we cooperate with everyone we think shares our values. That's maybe the most important.
Right here, there's a thanks.
Oh, thank you. My name is Karsten Friis. I'm a research professor at the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs. Thanks for your comments. My comment and a question, if I may, very quickly. First, the comment. I work on security and defense matters, and in a way, it's welcome that we get this focus on the Arctic. But at the same time, it takes away attention from Ukraine, which is unfortunate. So we need to be balanced here, right? It's an ongoing war, which is extremely important. So while we still have to address the Arctic, let's not forget about the real thing. My question is to Pistorius, and I think you will like my question, because I wanted to know what Germany is planning to do in defense side to engage more in the Arctic in the future. You like that one, right?
I like the answer, the question, and even more the answer. And I will give you the 20 euros later. But to be serious, well, it is about what I elaborated earlier. It is about joint security, and you mentioned Ukraine in the same context. And to make it absolutely clear, What I'm talking about, what I've been talking about, is we need in NATO a 360-degree view on the threats in the world. It is the eastern flank, of course. This is our priority one in Middle Europe, of course. It couldn't be different. Ukraine is showing us what's going to happen if you don't pay attention to what is going on. At the same time, we have the threats in southern Europe, like irregular migration, terrorism, Islamistic terror, and so on. And we have the high north, which is, I couldn't have described it better than you, of course. I mean, the map is the same, and the map is absolutely clear. So what we need to do is, we need to do jointly everything we can do to cover the protection we need on the NATO territory and in the neighborhood. This is our task. This is a huge task. Therefore, I'm quite convinced that 3.5% for defense in the years to come, for core defense, will never be enough, because the challenges are increasing at the moment. It is about deterrence, not defense in the first place, but deterrence. We need to be able to deter our adversaries. And to that Chinese colleague, is he still there?
I think he took off.
You need to go, okay. Well, China is not the first threat in the Arctic at the moment, but they are present, and they are moving ahead more strategically than the Russians in a totally different manner. But the Russian presence is impressive, and the northern fleet of the Russian Federation is impressive and is even growing in times like that while having a war against Ukraine. So this is what we have to be concerned about. And of course, Germany, Denmark, Spain, Italy, France, we are all challenged to take part in what is necessary to protect our territory.
Maybe just to add one thing, I totally agree, but this is a very tough message to all Europeans. I mean, we have to be able to tackle more crises at the same time, because the old world is not coming back. And I mean, and everything is interlinked. So the war in Ukraine has never been about Ukraine. Yeah, it's those who are suffering, but it's about Russia. And it's about Russia's imperial dreams, and the same goes for the Arctic region. This is not about the Arctic region, it's about Russia's imperial dreams. The hybrid war against Europe that is going on every day has to be tackled at the same time as the war in Ukraine and the Arctic. By the way, the door is totally open for Russia now in the Sahel region. We are out of it. So our problems with terrorism, it's not on top of mind right now. I can promise you they are going to return, and probably they will return at the same time as something is going on the eastern flank. So it's a new, I mean, forget about tackling one crisis. Yeah. We have to be able to tackle all of them at the same time. And I'm sorry to say, I think it's a part of the strategy from different parts of the world right now to throw as many conflicts, as many discussions, as many tweets, as many messages as possible on the table at the same time, so everybody's running around like a chicken without head. And therefore, when you were asking, it's a very good question, how much time do we spend on responding? Too much? So there are two very important lessons learned. As Europeans, you cannot build your strategy on what other people are doing. So was there like a European moment this January? Yes, there was. And now our obligation is to transform that Greenlandic European moment into a European strategy. And I think this is extremely important. The other lesson learned is that when we stand together and when we are able to respond as effectively as others, then the markets react, and then changes will be seen in the political messages from US.
I'm so sorry. I know we have more questions, but we are out of time. You all are wonderful to come in here. It's Saturday night. It's been a long few days with a lot of information. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mette.